Hi, everybody. Welcome to Expanding Queer Cinema, LGBT Filmmakers at South by Southwest. My name is Adam Baran. I am a filmmaker and curator. I directed the Film Trade Center that is world premiering South by Southwest tomorrow. All of us here on the panel today have films that are world premiering at South by Southwest tomorrow or throughout the festival, which runs from tomorrow, March 16th through Saturday, March 20th. And we decided to put this panel together to give a showcase to some of the queer filmmakers who have work playing in South by Southwest. We're gonna talk about a lot of stuff over the next 90 minutes. It's gonna be a casual conversation. And if you have questions or you wanna make comments as we're talking or something we say sparks your interest, please just leave a comment or in the chat, not in the chat, in the comment section below this video. You should be watching this on Facebook Live on the Trade Center documentary page. And just for anyone who may have to step out, or like, let's say you can watch, but you have to go make dinner or do something important. We're going to record this and we're going to put this up on YouTube tomorrow. So you'll be able to check out the rest of the panel if you have to step out at any time. So welcome everyone. Like I said, my name is Adam Baran. I am a filmmaker. I've been making queer films for the past 20 years, yikes. And I am the co-curator of Queer Art Film, which is a film series that that runs every month at the IFC Center and is now in virtual form. And I'm going to introduce my fellow panelists and read out their bios. So just 1 second here. Wes Hurley. Wave your hand, Wes. Yeah, Wes. Wes Hurley was born Vasily Naumenko in Vladivostok, Soviet Union. After immigrating to the US with his mother, Hurley studied drama and interdisciplinary arts at the University of Washington. He has written and directed and produced dozens of award-winning queer shorts and 2 seasons of Capitol Hill, a gender-bending pop art comedy series he created for the Huffington Post, which went on to be picked up for television in Europe and Canada, starring Jinx Monsoon and Ben de la Creme. The 2nd season of Capitol Hill was produced in partnership with Fred Hutchinson, one of the world's leading HIV research institutions, and included an innovative multimedia campaign that used the show's colorful characters to recruit participants for an HIV vaccine study. Hurley is a recipient of the Creative Capital Award, Seattle Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture Award, City Arts Magazine's Artist of the Year, and Advocate Magazine's Person to Watch. His autobiographical documentary short, Little Potato, won the jury prize at South by Southwest, along with 27 other awards around the world. Potato Dreams of America is his 3rd feature film. Hurley also produced the upcoming feature doc, Yes, I Am, directed by Aaron Baer, narrated by Zachary Quinto, and featuring Bill Gates. Welcome, Wes. So Mary Walker, wave your hand, Mary. Mary Walker is an award-winning director, writer, producer, and editor. Her work explores identity through multiple forms and genres, championing the shared humanity of others through stories that promote empathy and equality. I don't know why I said equality. Mary's film, The Soul of a Tree, won Best Short Documentary at the Cary Film Festival in 2016. Swim, her narrative short, won an Audience Award at the 2017 Los Angeles Film Festival. Mary's first feature, See You Then, is having its world premiere at South by Southwest 2021. Todd Stephens, give us a wave. Todd Stephens wrote, produced, and directed Another Gay Movie and Gypsy 83, and also wrote and produced Edge of 17. All 4 of his previous features won numerous festival awards and were released theatrically all over the world. Todd is currently a professor of film at School of Visual Arts in NYC, and his incredible films starring Udo Kier, Jennifer Coolidge, so many people, premieres this week at South by Southwest. And that's Swan Song. So welcome, Todd. And lastly, but not least, Whitney Skauge. Whitney is an award-winning filmmaker dedicated to diverse storytelling and representation. Her films act as an extension of social and political activism with hopes of helping audiences understand themselves and the world around them better. Working previously at Women in Film, Sundance Institute, Interloper Films, and the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, her career has demonstrated a consistent commitment to the art of independent filmmaking. She received her BFA in digital filmmaking from the University of Montana. The Beauty President, which premieres tomorrow in the documentary shorts program, is her debut film. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining me on this panel. I'm really thrilled and honored to be a part of South by Southwest, and especially to be in such great company with so many other incredible queer films. So welcome everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Thanks, Adam. And thanks for organizing this, Adam.
Yeah, really.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome, everyone. All right, let's get down to it. So, you know, I'd like to just see, you know, I said a little bit about what everybody's film is and the names. I'm wondering if we can just kind of start at the beginning. Tomorrow is the culmination of years of work for many of us, not just the LGBT filmmakers, but of course we have our own hoops to jump through to get our works made. So let's start at the beginning and just talk about how we all brought our films to life. We can just kind of go one by one and you know, give our viewers the elevator pitch on what our films are and how we got from idea to the festival. Let's start with Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely. So The Beauty President is about Terrence Allen Smith, who in 1992 ran under his drag queen persona, Joan Jett Black. This was a presidential campaign that happened at the height of the AIDS crisis. And so the campaign really was about bringing visibility to the issues of the queer issues of the time. And the film really tries to celebrate Terrence as a queer pioneer and hero. The way that I kind of got to this was that I was actually doing research for another project. I worked for a company called Breakwater Studios, and we were doing research for another project. I came across Joan Jett Black and Terrence's story, and I was like, yo, what about this? And unfortunately, it wasn't quite a fit for the project we were researching, but I could not get it out of my head. And then I ended up finding archival footage online. And once that happened, I was just like, oh my gosh, this needs to be made. And I ended up going back to my boss and saying, look, I understand that it's not the right fit for this project, but I would love to do my own version of it. What do you think? And thankfully they said yes, which I'm very grateful for. And I'm so excited to share it with everybody at South by.
Great. Todd, how about you?
My film is called Swan Song, and the elevator pitch is that it's a formerly fabulous hairdresser that's like now retired, and he escapes from his nursing home and takes a long walk across my hometown of Sandusky, Ohio to style a dead woman's hair for her funeral. And the dead woman is Linda Evans, and it's the first film that she's done in like 25 years. So total honor to have her, to work with her. And we got Jennifer Coolidge, which is like crazy, you know, melting my mind because she's like one of my all-time heroes, and Michael Urie, who's amazing, and but the star of it is Udo Kier, who plays the character of Mr. Pat. And Mr. Pat was a real person in my hometown that when I grew up as a little, you know, closeted queer boy, I would see this like fabulous freak, you know, like floating around downtown with a fedora, like very Quentin Crisp meets Truman Capote meets Maude meets, you know, like all, you know, the like outrageous like long brown cigarette and feather boa and velvet fedora and just was like quietly outrageous. And I you know, Pat was like, I was sort of fascinated and almost scared, you know, when I was little, because, you know, I don't know, it was just like, who is this, you know? And where I came from, everybody was pretty conservative, you know, so Pat really stuck out. And it was a really, so I felt different too, like I felt like I never fit in. And so, yeah, I always looked up to Pat. The first time that I went to my gay bar, which was called the Universal Fruit and Nut Company, which this story back here is about. Pat was there, and so when I saw him, everything kind of connected, and he's kind of been my muse, you know, like and I always knew all these years that I would make a film about him, and finally I'm glad that I finally did. I'm excited to finally show Pat off to the world.
Mary, how about you?
Hi, my film is called See You Then, and the synopsis basically is a decade after abruptly breaking up with Naomi, Chris invites her to dinner to discuss their complicated lives and relationships and Chris's transition. And then over the course of one evening, they engage in a series of increasingly intimate and vulnerable conversations until a shocking truth is revealed. It was definitely not intended to be my first film. I had written a number of scripts over the years that I really loved and cared for, but you know, being Asian American, being trans, like there just wasn't the budget that would necessitate these larger ideas. And so I really desperately wanted to tell like just a chamber piece where I really get to sit down with the actors and really get to like learn how to direct actors, because I'd mostly been doing documentary work over the years. And at the time, I was also going through a lot of different emotions of coming to terms with who I was, the choices I had made, like the work-life balance that we all, I think, struggle to try to find, right? And the script sort of became like a form of art therapy. You know, it was like me just sort of like plugging in all these things that were going on in my life at the time that I was coming to terms with. And then all of a sudden one day, like the character like spoke for itself. You know, like Chris spoke for herself, and I was like, whoa, okay, all right, this is getting interesting. And then, you know, and then I started to fall in love with these two women that are the leads of my film. And then I felt really awful ruining their lives, you know, as I had to destroy it for narrative purposes. But it's just been an absolute joy. And really in the end, I was talking to one of our co-leads, Puya, and I was saying to her, you know, I never imagined that this would be my first film, but this was always meant to be my first film. You know, very lucky.
Yeah, we all are. Wes, how about you?
So my film, Potato Dreams of America, it's 99.9% autobiographical. And it's about my growing up gay in USSR, just as it was kind of falling apart. And then my amazing mom, who became a mail-order bride, basically, and brought us to the States. And then things just kind of got wilder from there. It's I think it's a dark comedy. It's hard for me to like gauge the tone of it myself, but that's the tone that I was going for. Yeah, and I wrote it about 8 years ago. It was a struggle to get it made. I ended up making a short film, Little Potato, a short doc, that did pretty well and eventually helped sort of fundraise for this film.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the origins of my film. My film is Trade Center, and my film is it's a short documentary about the secret history of the World Trade Center as a cruising destination for gay men to have sex and meet each other in tea rooms in the 80s and 90s prior to 9/11. And the film is based on a short story by a friend of mine named Billy Miller, who wrote an amazing essay. He edits the famous gay sex story zine called Straight to Hell. And he wrote this incredible essay about this history. And I just thought nobody had ever talked about this history, and I was really interested in it. And so right before the pandemic, we went and we shot it and collected stories during the pandemic and edited it over the first 6 months of the pandemic. And so that's a little bit about kind of where I'm at. It's my first documentary as a director after producing last year's Circus of Books. And so it feels kind of incredible full circle to be around at South by Southwest. So yeah, so well, let's kind of move on a little bit. So you know, the process, I don't want to dwell overly on the pandemic because I'm sure that like we're all so sick of talking about it by this point, but you know, obviously, like, some of our films were written a long time ago. Some of our films were made, you know, have been in the works for a long time. But I'm curious, just to kind of sort of get it out of the way, I guess, is to hear from each of you, you know, how the pandemic and sort of played a role in either creating an obstacle that you had to overcome in your film, or, you know, what we're kind of talking about the new landscape that we're all in, and I think it sort of makes sense to start there. So I'm curious if people can talk about any challenges they had facing putting the film together in the wake of this.
For See You Then, I was really, really fortunate in that we finished filming February 1st. And I mean, we had heard rumors about what was going on with the pandemic, certainly in Wuhan, and it was as it was starting to spread. But you know, we were so fortunate to finish filming, and then I took a couple weeks off. I put together an assembly edit at the beginning of March. I sat down with my producer, one of my producers who was in town at the time. We did an assembly edit review, and then we're like, okay, cool. So you'll make a few changes. Then in a couple weeks, we're all going to get together, and then Matt will be back in town. Kristen hopefully will be able to fly out, and then we'll be able to watch it, right? And I was like, oh yeah, totally, great, great, great. And I think it was literally the next day that everything locked down in California. I don't know if y'all had a similar experience, but being an editor, it was really, really, really challenging to not have the ability to test screen in a space with other people. You know, one of the things I really take a lot of stock in the editing process is just not only like people giving notes, because anybody could give notes at the end of a review session, but it's what you feel in the room at the time. You know, like, are people listless? Are they bored? Are they turning on? Are they looking at their phones? Like, are they engaged in these certain moments? And so not having that, it's like a real blind spot as an editor and a filmmaker, because I'm like, I hope these scenes work, but not having been in a room with anybody, it's always hard to tell. But at the same time too, it was also the most painterly editing's ever been for me, because I didn't have to, like, you know, go to the office and sit down with like one of our producers and like go through these things where you're sitting behind a screen, you're making faces because you're like, well, that's not the way I wanted it to be, you know, and then you gotta go through these things. So not having that was really freeing. And I don't expect this process to ever happen again. I certainly hope that this never happens again. But it was just a totally unique, kind of special experience. And also being able to take the time to reflect on choices. Like, I could walk away from a scene for 2 or 3 days and say, like, okay, does this, you know, how does this feel now? You know, instead of in the moment when you're editing and you feel like it's right, you know, and then you look at it a couple days later, you're like, what was I thinking? You know, reversing clouds in that scene, that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, in the moment, it feels like a really great idea. So that was sort of my pandemic experience.
I think so much of editing is having perspective, you know, having time away from it, you know, to really see it. I totally agree. And we were able to we shot it before the pandemic. And for me, it gave me the opportunity to really take time to really nurture the cut, you know. And I worked with my editor, amazing editor, Santiago, like remotely, you know, on Zoom, which I really love being. Mari, I don't know how you edit your own stuff, like, because like I could never ever do that, you know. But
painful.
Is it?
It's painful. It can be painful sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I always like, you know, after the first assembly, I like being with the editor for the rest of the passes. And so it was really like, God, how's this going to work, like not being together in the room? But it was interesting because like we edited on Zoom like this, and we could see each other's face, and then he shared his premiere screen. And it was unlike staring at the back of an editor's head, which usually, like when you're in a room, like we could actually look at each other, and he would like play something for me and like watch my face, you know. And so it was actually kind of cool. Like it actually worked out pretty well. But I'd rather be in the room, but we made it work, you know, like we all did, I'm sure. What about you guys?
Yeah, we were super lucky to finish shooting right before everything shut down as well. And then I actually found, I mean, not to say, of course, it's a horrible, horrible thing, but on a personal level, like it really helped me edit. You know, just being completely cut out. You know, not have any contact with people and not have any distractions. I had a consulting editor in LA, Annette Davey, who would just, you know, watch the film and send me notes, and I would, you know, respond. And but yeah, it kind of, the timing worked out for me okay. I mean, I'm just so grateful to the universe that we finished shooting, because I can't imagine what would have happened. It would have been just a nightmare.
I think I might be the only one that shot during the pandemic. Our company, Breakwater Studios, they did an amazing job at the top of the pandemic figuring out a system to be able to shoot safely. And so I was a beneficiary of that system, and we shot in July. It's a very strict safety protocol with a lot of sterilization and a lot of quarantining. And so I think for me, it was, you know, this was the first time I had a film that had funding behind it. This was the first time I had a film that had a team behind it. And so for me, everything was new. And to put the pandemic on top of it, it was just like, I think for me, it was more like, I gotta go. Like, this is my opportunity. This is it. Let's do it. And so for me, it was kind of like I had to push the pandemic to the side a little bit and not let it be an obstacle. I had this opportunity in front of me that I really wanted to pursue. And so I had to find a way to circumvent what was happening. And I think I'm just so grateful that we were able to figure this out and that everyone felt comfortable with it and it was safe. And then I edited the film on my own. And that was just like, you know, the first time I'd really gone through a notes process with other people's influence aside from my own. And so for me, it was really like a learning moment as a filmmaker to understand how do you dissect notes while also staying true to what you want the film to be. And so, you know, it was really just like this kind of transformative process for me making this film.
I love that. I think, yeah, for just to sort of piggyback on it, that you know, as a doc filmmaker, it's like my film uses the voices of people, and you hear the voices of different people telling their stories about cruising while you see modern day footage. And you know, I was thinking about it as you were talking, and it was sort of like the you know, it was originally only supposed to be one person's voice, and then I decided to add other people's voice. But by that point, the pandemic had hit, and I was like, well, there's no way I can go shoot more people. So it sort of became about, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And, you know, the absence of limitations is the enemy of art, the Orson Welles quote. Like, you know, like I had to use people's voices. And so then that became part of this project of, you know, okay, I'm making this short, but I'm only using these kind of rudimentary techniques of recording people's phone calls and mixing those in, you know, and now I'm like approaching another project, but we're talking about, okay, you got the vaccine, okay, great, so we can set up an in-person shoot. But yeah, it's interesting. And there's something I think about also, like how much, you know, we were all afforded just so much time, and time seemed to stretch out so intensely over the past year as we were, you know, many of us were working on this film. Like it just, it's such a strange and unique experience that I don't think you have if you're under intense pressure to like make the Sundance deadline or make this festival deadline or what have you. You're just sort of like, we don't know what the world is going to look like, you know. Which kind of leads me into the next question, which is this new sort of virtual world, you know, we're sort of maybe coming out of it soon, we hope, according to our president. Maybe we'll be back in theaters by the end of the year. But we've watched over the past year as the cinema landscape changed dramatically. People can't make money putting their movies into physical theaters and doing, you know, runs like that. But we've also seen a lot of films that took advantage of the, you know, kind of captive audiences of people just desperate for content, people, trying to fill their time and fill their hours while they're on lockdown. And so we've seen a lot of new things. And one of the things has been this advent of the virtual festival. Obviously, South by Southwest didn't happen last year, and now it's a virtual festival. And so I'm curious, just if we can, if people have thoughts about, sort of like is there anything that's exciting people about this potential of the sort of virtual world, or are people just really missing the in-person opportunity to get back to it?
I think it's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's an interesting opportunity when you're talking about accessibility to the theater and you're talking about getting rid of access to barriers. I think, thinking regionally, there's so many people that maybe can't make it to a Sundance or can't make it to a South by, but now there's other avenues where you're able to access this content. And I think what we might see is a new generation of filmmakers that are inspired by being able to access that in a way that they weren't before, especially for short film. It's really exciting to be able to share our film with more audiences, even if it's different and it's limited. And part of this is coming from, I'm a newer filmmaker, and, I don't have that experience of being in the theater and experiencing that with an audience. And so for me, I just have to view this as an opportunity to connect with an audience in some way. And I think as filmmakers, if we can not limit ourselves, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation come out of this period of time.
I was going to say it's kind of, I feel a little liberated in being able to tell people like, okay, it's going to be playing for 4 days at South by Southwest versus like, okay, so Tuesday at 2:00 you have to drive down to Long Beach, and then you're going to have to like go pay $12 for parking to go spend $12 on another ticket to watch like, all these films. And I think it could be, there's a real beauty to being able to screen these films in the privacy of one's own home. And I think I could speak, I think for all of our films, in that they're very deeply personally and deeply felt films. I think the films that I really feel bad for are like the big, crowd-pleasing Sundance comedies, or like one of the, like where it's like you really, or like an action movie or like a Black Widow movie where you really need like that audience to really get that energy. And I think like we have the advantage of having stories that can be watched with like 1 or 2 people at home in the confines, but still have that visceral, emotional, cinematic impact, I still miss theaters. Don't get me wrong. I miss the cinematic experience so much. I drove to Oceanside over the summer to go see Tenet. That's how desperate I was. I drove an hour and a half. I had to. So, but,
I think for me, it's not going to be totally real until it plays with a room full of people, Like, I hear what you guys are saying, and I think that's totally true, but I really miss connecting with like our people, and just really feeling, that's, you guys will see, when you do it, that it's like, there's nothing like that feedback,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it can reach more people, this way and all that. There's definitely a silver lining to it, but, yeah, you'll see. it's just to be able to talk to people and hang out with people, and that you have this room full of people where everybody's attention is focused on this thing and that collective energy. I miss that a lot, just going to the movies and feeling that, but after all this time of working on this damn film, I want to like feel that feeling, so I'm excited, and I think it will happen. It's happening. It's going to happen soonish. I feel like it's, the world is waking up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
obviously we need like, we're all people who our work traditionally was, LGBT film festivals were the place that traditionally like showcased our work, and where we found our audience, we built our audience, we developed our audience over many years, and I'm talking sort of as the gay filmmaker, queer filmmakers as a, as a sort of one unit type, so I apologize for generalization, but the festivals need to survive. And so obviously it's hard economically for the festivals, but at the same time, it feels like a lot of the festival audiences, they're not getting younger and they're not bringing in new people. And something about the virtual world kind of enables a whole new set of people to, to fall in love. I'm thinking about like Wes in your film. So interesting, like, you have this great scene where the character who your stand-in in the movie, the character who is you, is finds goes to the queer film section of his local video store and rents The Living End, and that's kind of this gateway into his own understanding of his sexuality, and becomes a plot point, And so, I mean, that's a kind of testament to physical spaces being, and it's a subject of my film too, that physical spaces can't replace virtual spaces, but it feels like there's something positive about the just the fact that all the festivals have had to figure out how to adapt in this way,
Yeah. I think also one of the other things is, at least for me, the films that I've watched in the past year that I've really connected with are just about people, and people being together. And like Todd, for instance, your film, when everybody's at the club, I started crying because I was like, oh God, I miss that energy. I miss being around people, and like that love that the characters feel in that moment was just it's liberating, It just feels so like we just need it. We miss being around people, especially as filmmakers and artists. Like that's what we thrive on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Todd, I love watching, even just with your film is so joyous, but just watching someone be able to escape from an interior space and be able to just be like wandering around town, and on the move. There is something that, when I watched it the other day, I was just like, yes, like I'm waiting for that moment where we can all just kind of escape, And,
yeah, I never really thought about it that way, but it was all pre-planned, like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So, a little bit, and one other element of the sort of the changing landscape about this year, not really just this year, but especially this past year, and really the past 4 years, maybe the past 8 years, but is about, the changing landscape of representation. And, it seems like I said, LGBT film festivals used to be the kind of the place where, you would go, or the queer film section at your video store used to be this very small section. And it seems like, now more and more, especially over the lockdown, I know Circus of Books, really benefited from premiering on Netflix, but, over the past year, we've seen, Veneno and It's a Sin, and we had the dueling Hallmark gay Christmas movies. It seems like there's so much more gay characters and stories and content kind of seeping into, even the most mainstream shows. And so I'm curious if we could talk a little bit about, that changing landscape of cinema. And it feels to me like, there's a level in which certain stories are being, Hollywoodized for everyone's benefit and for mass consumption. But all of our films, to me, really feel like, films that are still really rooted in, issues and important kind of things that are part of the conversation now. So I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about the importance of the different queer representations in our films.
Call on someone, not me.
I mean, I find it thrilling that, I remember being in high school, and, that was around the time I was, coming out and kind of figuring out who I was. And I was so obsessed about representation at the time, and GLAAD used to have this like list of things that might be gay that are coming out. And looking back, I mean, stuff was pathetic. It's like this actress said that she secretly thinks that her character is gay, you know, or like this tiny minor character that's like on screen for 5 seconds is gay. And I was like so excited about stuff like that. Or, you know, or even actors coming out, it's like, you know, it was so rare and so obscure. And nowadays it's just, I mean, I can't imagine kids growing up now who have so many, it's like any show you start, almost every show on TV has gay characters, and so many films do as well. Like last time I went to Vancouver with my partner, and we just randomly, like I wasn't really following what's playing, and we just randomly started watching movies, like mainstream Hollywood movies, and all of them ended up being gay, like having major gay component. And I was just like, it just blew me away. It's like I wasn't even looking for that, and I found it, and I just find it so exciting. But I am sad that it's gonna hurt gay and lesbian film festivals. I think that's kind of the side effect of that. That's unfortunate, and obviously that's where a lot of beginning filmmakers to support it, LGBT filmmakers. So that's very sad, you know.
I see, I think that there's like we're coming into sort of a crossroads in terms of representation in media, and I think it's really exciting for so many mainstream projects and films to be like supportive of queer characters and queer entertainment. But I also hope that we could still have films that are mainstream that appeal to everybody, but I hope that like more queer-centric films will still exist. I worry about like those films getting hit hard, and like because of, you know, the mainstreamification of the queer community, that they'll end up becoming like the best, you know, the gay best friend, or the, you know, the trans best friend, but not having those stories that exist strictly within the binary of what it means to be a part of the queer community, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know, Todd, your film is about, you know, a queer elder, and I think your film, maybe more than any of ours, maybe not, but there's so much, you know, that character journeys around a small town and encounters seemingly all sorts of different types of people and different types of representations. And I'm curious, you know, with that film, like how kind of conscious were you in terms of trying to, you know, present a really diverse landscape, which I think it does incredibly successfully.
Thank you. Well, I definitely wanted to not have it be about that being gay was a conflict in the film. You know, like it was almost to the character, this older guy from another generation that had been like in a nursing home for 7 or 8 years. It was almost like a conflict to him how liberated the world was, you know, because he wasn't really used to it, and almost in a way like super happy and joyous that, you know, there's two dads playing catch with their son in the park, but also a certain, you know, bittersweet, maybe somewhat resentment that wasn't his life, and that's not going to be his life, you know. So yeah, that was one thing I thought about. And also a thing that I really wanted to play with in my film was like, and it really speaks to kind of what we're talking about, you know, is the death of gay culture in a small town, you know, which like I really feel like that's the double-edged sword, is that like, you know, It's a Sin, which I loved, is on HBO, you know, and you know, but which is amazing, you know, but maybe is that to the detriment? Does that, you know, as things are more and more accepted, you know, our community sort of like is dissolving, you know, to a certain extent. Like, for example, you know, the Mr. Pat character in my film, he was, you know, from the generation that helped build the gay bar in my small town, and he kind of goes back looking for it, and it's like about to close, you know. which is happening all over the place, for various different reasons. And there's a line in the film where his friend says, who needs the fruit and nut company when they can hold hands at Applebee's, which is true in my hometown, luckily. When I went back to shoot the film, they were having the 3rd annual Gay Pride Festival, which I couldn't even believe it. You know what I mean? Back when we made Edge of 17, we had to hide what the film was about. We had a fake script, because we felt like people wouldn't help us, And as a matter of fact, once word got out, it did cause a controversy. But now it's 20 years later, it's a whole different world, which is amazing, It's amazing that we don't need, I guess, ? The fruit and nut as much as back when I was 17, that's the only place I could go to dance with my boyfriend or kiss my boyfriend or hold his hand or whatever and not get the shit kicked out of us or whatever, So it's great that we don't have to have that. It's really it's a really fascinating conversation because I don't have all the answers, but it's amazing that we don't need that as much, that safe space. But on the other hand, there's this whole close-knit family, this community, this culture of traditions and way of talking and, being that's melting away,
Right.
And,
Yeah.
at least in my hometown, that's what's up, and that's sad to me. So it's very bittersweet.
Yeah.
And I think your film captures it so beautifully. It really resonated.
Thank you.
That sadness, but yeah, it's a confusing feeling because it's we got what we wanted in a way, but the price that we pay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as we were heading into the call today. I was sort of reflecting on I fit my, I'm biracial and I'm also trans, and so I've kind of lived in all these different identities. But I was thinking about how it's so wonderful. I came out and I really only lost one friends, but that's you can't say that to even a half generation for me, So it's the landscape, and so I spend my time with trans folks, but also gender folks and people of all different creeds, and that's so wonderful. But it is there is my desire, or not my desire, but my need to I belong to a community sort of lessened as a result of that. And I think that there is a loss of that cultural voice that I think is so important and really defines us. I think a lot about experiences with being Japanese American. My grandparents were interned during World War II, and as a consequence of that, they really wiped away all of their connections to Japanese culture from my mom and my aunts, and then as a consequence, I felt less connected to that culture. So there's that delicate balance of trying to maintain an identity that's within a culture that's so beautiful, but at the same time seeing those cultures sort of being erased because they have been gentrified, for all lack of a better term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's something we're talking about that's really interesting is kind of this idea of preservation. And I think maybe part of this is my documentary side and brain, but for me, with our film, it was about preserving the story and celebrating the story because we need them. And I think part of our responsibility as filmmakers and what we're talking about is to make work that saves this culture and to make work that preserves this culture and to make work that is by us for us. And I think maybe what's happening is that there's something that's happening in the mainstream, but I don't think that's the end of it. I think there are still so many more stories that we need to uncover. And for me, as a young queer person, when I found out about Joan Jett Black's story, I felt bad. I felt like a bad queer person because I didn't know about the story. And that's not my fault, though. And I think part of it is it's just frustrating because you want that history so badly because we need to know where we came from, because it's not like we have this backlog. And I think for me as a filmmaker, I feel such an intense responsibility to find more of these stories and to hold on to them and not let them get lost. Because I think, that feeling of loss that you guys have been talking about, it's really intense because we didn't have those spaces. And it's very interesting. I think like we're in a really interesting position as filmmakers to make sure that this doesn't get lost.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing for my film. It's like stories of especially stories of queer sex, which are so, they're considered pornographic, even if you have it used to be, and I remember when like two men kissing on TV was considered, the most shocking and pornographic thing you could show, and because that's how the Christian right equates it. And so these stories of spaces where people would meet for sexuality, which were often cross-class spaces, some of the few spaces that people could meet cross-class, cross-race, which is somewhat in my film. And so my film is really about that sense of loss and about this idea that like we don't keep these memories. And so it is like the follow-up films now that I'm working on it's all going to be a series about these spaces where queer sex and queer socializing happens, but these spaces are long gone now. So I think that's an incredible point. We just have to capture as many of these stories as we can, and that's our responsibility.
Do they exist? Even pandemic aside, I'm asking for a friend. Do they exist? Does any of that stuff exist anymore, Adam?
Yeah. I think it has existed through history. Sex spaces and people finding each other. There's always just someone who pulls someone off in a bush and says like, here, let's go over here. And then someone else like, oh, those two guys in the bush, I guess that's where we should go. And then, there are spaces all over Europe. There are public parks in Europe where they have designated cruising spaces and things. So these things, they still happen, but certainly I think, when we talk about, like we were talking about gentrification and things like that, gentrification, security, surveillance, those are all, elements of my film that, the increase of those things over the last 20 years, the surveillance state and whatnot has made it, much harder for people to gather in those spaces. And it's made it easier for people to gather in their own homes, Grindr and all these technologies that enable us to get together. But there's something about, like you said, like the meeting space in your film, Todd, or, the video store, or just happening into places where you don't know who's going to be there, the potential to have an encounter that will change your life, or encounter a film that'll change your life is, really profound in a way that we don't want to lose, I think, as part of our culture.
I think that too, but maybe 18-year-old queer kid doesn't give a shit about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be.
I don't know.
I'll be really excited to see what this next generation of filmmakers are going to bring, like the Gen Zers who are like coming up with this understanding, with these acceptances, but also with just like the savviest tech folks you'll ever meet in your life. And it's like, I have no idea what they're going to be able to.
Yeah.
It's going to be wild, y'all.
Well,
it's going to be wild.
Just on TikTok alone, TikTok, it sounds I feel hilarious saying this, but TikTok does have like a whole strand of like a queer community. And like, maybe that's a virtual space, but I think we are always carving out space, no matter where it is. And I don't think that's going to stop. And maybe that's frustrating. Maybe it's not frustrating, but I think to the Gen Z point, like they're on top of it, like I think there's just like, and I think we should feel proud because what we had to go through and the needles that we pushed made it so that they could do that. And so I think like it's celebrating. I keep saying celebrating. I'm in a very cheery mood today. But it's like celebrating all of these steps that we've made and all of the dents that we've made. Todd, your films, those are dents so that someone on TikTok can go and they can post something about their boyfriend and not feel weird about it. Adam, Circus of Books, that is showing people that we have always been in these spaces and that there has always been a sex industry for queer people. I think it's just like, it's just very interesting to see how this all weaves together and how it's not just one of us, it's all of us, and it's all compounding on top of each other.
Yeah. Dents, lots of little dents.
Lots of little dents. Yes, lots of little dents. We like to think that Terrence and Joan Jett Black made their own dent as well.
Absolutely, and I think that Joan Jett, just to talk about celebration, I mean, the idea of your film reflecting on someone who broke such boundaries, the first, black drag queen running for president. It's such an incredible boundary breaking thing. And, we've lived through such horror the past 4 years as queer people, to think about how much better the world would be if we had Joan Jett Black as president all those years ago. It's not insignificant. I mean, it's an important reclamation for so many people to learn about these things, especially in a world where, we're consuming so much media, so much information is just coming at us. And, what film can really do is make us slow down and look at something and take it and consider it more, in depth in the way that art is supposed to,
Yeah. No, it's really well put. I think that's very true. I think that film does have that capability, storytelling has the capability, for sure.
Well, we're all committed to telling LGBTQ stories, and I'm curious, we're at different stages in our career, all of us, but I'm curious if we, if people have if anyone has either a mantra or some kind of, hot tip or something that you rely on that's helped you sustain or grow your career over these years.
Don't ever let people tell you what you can't do. I mean, even before transitioning, that was something where I was like, oh, I really love to do this transition sort of opening sequence for my documentary short. And the person was like, oh, you can't do that. That takes forever. That costs too much money and you're not going to learn. Don't even think about it. And that just made me even more determined to make it just exactly that way, which is what I did. And I mean, the person was right. It was really painful, but it was so rewarding when I finished it. But I think that there is that built-in thing that particularly queer folks are going to have to face even more, which is this like preconceived notion that you can't do that. That's not your thing. You don't have the ability to tell that future. You don't have the ability to tell that story. And I think that as queer filmmakers and filmmakers in general, we just have to constantly push back against that and prove people wrong,
Yeah, I remember my professor in college who told me that if I wanted to just make work about gay people and try to make, find a way to marry, gay subject matter with Hollywood film forums, that, it was going to be limiting for me. And I always just found myself so hurt by that and tried to push back against it, and also understood what she meant on some deep level, that yes, it has been limiting. And there are times when I look and I feel like Udo Kier in your movie, Todd, where I'm watching the landscape of Hollywood shift to a place where there is so much more mainstream gay content, and I'm sitting here going okay, that's kind of what I wish was I born too early or something like that, But it is true, you do have to just push back, because right now I feel so great. I'm turning 40 on Saturday, and I finally have made this film that's both explicit, very super gay, and it's my first film playing at a major non-gay film festival. So I feel like I've broken out of the box a little bit, and I've sort of overcome that limit. So maybe it took 20 years, but it still happened, and it kind of feels great, What about anyone else? Anyone else have mantras or sayings that keep them going? Wes?
I have, my thought, something that it took me time to figure out, is really being selective, and because it's so hard, especially for feature films, but really anything, it just takes so much work. So figuring out is this, is it really, because I always have so many different ideas and so many, seemingly great ideas, but it's is this something that I'm willing to spend that much time on, and really devote that much energy to? And that's what I tell, a lot of my friends who are at that stage. I'm just be really, really selective and really focus your attention on, the things that you really, really care about, because time is precious.
Yeah,
Time is
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, time is the greatest enemy.
Yeah. But I mean, the as the older one here, whatever, it's like, it's weird. As you get older, it's like you almost like, at least for me, speaking for myself, it's almost like harder to you can almost like get in your head about that too much, like because it really is true that like you have to think really long and hard. I mean, to me, like these are our children, these films or whatever, and sometimes they grow up the way we want them to, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they succeed in life, and sometimes they don't. But we have to love them all the same, but it's like, sometimes it takes us, as we all have had, I think, so years to get these things made, and so it's almost like harder for me to take. I haven't made a movie before this one in a long time, and I think that a lot of it was because I just really wanted to make. I guess I wanted to wait till it was like the thing like worth dying for, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? And I think maybe sometimes like we can. When I was younger, I was a little more like just like like just fearless, So I'm trying to keep that fearless kind of like mentality, I'm trying to rediscover that, and as I get old, you know what I mean? But stay fearless, guys.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. It is hard too, because I think that there is like a naivete that comes with directing your first film, where you're just sort of like, I'm just doing it, I don't know. Right. And then as time progresses, all these other conditions come up, or those experiences where you're like, oh, I had that thing and that didn't go right. Maybe I'll try it this way this time. Exactly. And those things start tripping you up in your own career, because then you're like, well, I don't want to like branch out. I don't want to push, because I'm afraid that it might get past that thing that I'm not comfortable in doing. But then it's like that. But it's like that little space right before that thing like goes off the cliff. That's where you want to be, right? As an artist, like you want to be straight in that line of like, how can we like talk about these issues or these themes in a way that fits my voice, but also challenges others,
Mm-hmm. I kind of have a little saying that I tell myself, and it's no ego, just art. And kind of what I mean by that is that you have to be able to remove yourself a certain amount so that you can, exactly what you just said, get to that cliff where you're pushing yourself. And I think for me, I try to really remember why I wanted to make the film and remember what the film is ultimately about, and try not to get hung up on, am I a good artist? Was that shot framed the right way? Who's going to want to see this? Like all of that stuff is noise. And to get from A to B, you really have to like let go a little bit. And you have to be able to get out of your head and just do what the piece wants you to do. And it can be very hard to navigate that. But whenever I am in the edit room and I kind of want to hit my head against the table, I just tell myself, no ego. Like you have to get your ego out of it, because otherwise you're just going to shoot yourself up.
It's really true.
I think it's tangentially related to my thing, which I said earlier, which is like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I spent like so many years being this like perfectionist, where it was like, no, it has to be, I can't shoot that because I want to shoot on film, or I want to do this, or I want to, and it's sort of like, nobody's going to, no, the bar is so much lower than you set in your head, and you can watch every Fellini film and every Antonioni film and every whatever film made by the masters of the masters, and, convince yourself that your film has to be like that, or that you're going to be, you have to be the one to break those boundaries and be the next Derek Jarman or whoever that you worship. But, in reality, like your films are going to be that to someone else if you put your heart into it and, try to just do your best as an artist, I think, and not, worry about that, it has to be absolute perfection, because we're just never going to have those resources, until things change,
Well, and I did the crazy thing in the post process that I meant to mention earlier, is that I decided last year, because we were stuck during the pandemic, that I was going to watch every single Academy Award winning and nominated Best Picture movie like of all time. So it's something like over 500 films, which is very punishing because it's like the greatest films of American cinema, like, you know, or mainstream American cinema, like going out and like doing all these things. And it was very overwhelming and intimidating at times, but it was also one of the films I watched for the first time was From Here to Eternity, and beautiful film. But there's like a scene where you could clearly see like the crew and the camera in the shadow. I was like, if they do it, it's fine. I'm not gonna freak out about that one shot which has like you can see the boom pole for an eighth of a second or something. I was like, whatever. Like if they could get away with it, I could get away with it.
Yeah.
I'd love to pivot just a little bit to talking with Todd and Wes and Mary about the process of working with actors. Whitney and my films are documentaries, and so I'm just curious, you know, can you talk a little bit about, you know, what it was like for each of you, the process of casting and the process of trying to kind of communicate your stories? They're all obviously very different, and you're working with actors at different levels. And I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about the that experience.
I always, you know, because I'm a teacher too, so like I always say to my students that 80 or 90% of directing is like casting the right people and then getting them to trust you, you know, and you trusting them as well, you know. But yeah, so I spend a lot of time casting. On Swan Song, it was really interesting because I typically like to rehearse, you know, like and every other film I've ever done, like I blocked out like 4 or 5 days before the shoot, which is really challenging with everybody's schedule and whatever. But I was like, I'm like resolute that like I want to, you know, just even in a big empty room, you know, and rehearse, not over rehearse, but go, you know, start off with a table reading of like all the actors and then go through each scene with the different actors, because like that. And then I find that they still, like on another gay movie, I remember like the 4 guys started like hanging out, like they were best friends, like they play in the movie, you know, and you know, having slumber parties and whatever, you know, like in bonding, you know, and learning to trust each other. But so I really like that because it builds like a unit of the director and the actors. Like it on Swan Song, I didn't get to do that at all. But number one, because like Udo, that's not his style, you know. Like he's just very in the moment, you know. And his whole thing was, I don't want to act, I just want to be, you know. So to be honest, that scared the shit out of me, you know. Because like I'm used to like you know, I'm not trying to peak the performance. Like you want to get it tuned so it's like right ready to pop, like when you actually shoot it, you know what I mean, and not like overdo it. But I didn't really see anything, you know, that I didn't know what was going to happen, you know. But I was scared, you know, but from the first day, you know, he just totally delivered this like reality that was like amazing to me, you know. So I guess it can work both ways. And then, you know, the other thing I would say about that is like actors work have totally different approaches, you know. Like Jennifer Coolidge like is all about like improvising, you know. And you really don't know what's going to come out of her mouth, you know. And that wasn't like Udo's style, at least on this film. So it's like you might have like one actor that's, you know, like kind of doing more used to doing the lines as they're written, and another actor that's just like kind of say whatever, you know. So that, but it always can work, you know. Like that fascinates me, that sometimes I'm like, oh my God, they have totally different approaches, you know. But it still can work. Actually,
Udo is so
sometimes maybe
good
the
in
fact that
film.
they have different approaches what might cause like a nice spark, or chemistry. Yeah.
I was just saying, Udo is so good in your film. It's just amazing. Like
Udo?
I've seen him.
So good.
I've seen him in so many things, and I have never like he's just amazing in this role. Like amazing.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
know. I mean, I really honestly, every day on set, I felt like I was like witnessing a master class in acting. You know what I mean? And
How did you write with him in mind, or how did you go around?
no, I didn't. No, I had when I first wrote the script, I had Gene Wilder in my head. That's how long ago I wrote it.
Oh wow, yeah.
But over time, I realized that Udo was really the only. Even though the guy that I wrote was like originally from West Virginia, and he wasn't German or anything like that. But I just thought outside the box, and I just, especially after I met Udo and stuff, it was my casting director's idea, and I was like, oh my god, I love him, yeah. But he doesn't really. It's been a while since he was like the carried a movie, But meeting him and stuff, I was like, he's the only dude in the world that can play this part. It was a really hard part to cast, But it really was cool to be able to let Udo show everything that he can do as an actor, and that I'm really proud of that.
I mean, it feels like it was creative for him. Like I can't, I haven't seen the film. It's like it feels like that was.
We'll pretend that was
the perfect marriage. Yeah.
There's something like dreamlike and ultra cinematic about his presence.
Yeah.
In the presence of these other people that kind of it makes it suddenly it heightens it so much in the sense where you're like, yeah, and there's some place in my brain where I'm like, he doesn't fit because he's German and he's sort of strange, but then there's this other place where I'm like, no, that makes it more realistic because that kind of unpredictability is actually more realistic than the kind of programmatic sort of, if he was just sort of who you'd imagine being in
right.
that, part. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks.
There's the moment that really clicked for me with him was when he goes to the first hairdressers, and then he gets the hat, and when he's in the hat and he's outside, but it's like that thing, that great acting thing where it was he still sensed that there were things happening, and so he still felt like he was living in the moment, and it was just so beautifully done.
You mean when he goes outside and strikes a pose?
Yeah. Oh my God, so good. Oh, I loved it so much.
Wow.
Wes, what about you in terms of working with actors?
The project started with an actress actually. So there's a local actress, or she was Seattle-based, Mariah C. Kaminsky, that I just loved watching, and I wrote the script for her to play my mom, basically. And then as the movie sort of went through all those different versions of budgets and things like that, we finally, once we figured out the budget, it was a new process for me because I always write roles for specific actors, and that's how I like to work generally. And this time I had to do actual casting, which I was really scared about. And I was really scared about casting kids, especially because I've never worked with kids. And I don't generally like kids so much. But, oh my God, we started auditioning these kids and they were amazing. They just gave me so much hope in arts, everything, because they were so good. And, we ended up getting Hirsch, who's just this incredible kid, and Tyler, who plays an older potato, who was also really incredible. And I was just blown away by, I just don't understand where people that young get so much depth and sort of intuitive, emotional, intelligence. I don't know.
Because they're not thinking, they're not overthinking it.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. And
I love that boy in your movie. He was so damn good. Both the guys are amazing, but the one that plays the younger little you, oh my God, little potato.
Well, and also Wes, to also throw a little bit more your way too. It's you somehow compressed an insane amount of time and story into such a small amount of actual like screen time. It was massively impressive. Because I was like looking at it, I was like, it took me 75 minutes to just tell a story about two people at night. And you're like, let me tell a whole life story of this person in 90 minutes. I was like, oh my God, just so impressive, really.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and then in terms of, you know, the finishing out the cast, we wanted some name actors. When I wrote the role for my grandma, I really was hoping for Leah Delaria, so it just kind of was amazing that she ended up coming on board. And Dan Lauria was really amazing to work with. Jonathan Bennett, who ended up playing Jesus, so fun. I do agree with Todd. I would say even for me, like 99% of directing is casting. Like it's like looking at, you know, finding that right person. And for me, that's part of the excitement, is seeing what they do with it. Like, I mean, I find a person that I know will do sort of the thing that I want them to do and will look a certain way that I want them to look and have a certain energy. But there's that one, you know, there's that remaining mystery of like, what are they bringing to it? And that's always so exciting to me. Like, I don't want to necessarily break an actor and make them exactly like, you know, be a certain way. I think it's so exciting to see what they bring to it. And so I don't know. I always feel like I don't direct enough, because you hear the stories about, you know, like David Fincher or somebody like doing 50 takes, and I'm like, I don't know, 3 takes, you know, like I'm happy with it. Like when the actors are in the right role, it's really just fun to watch them and, you know, maybe guide them a little bit, but for the most part, there's not that much.
Yes. Stay out of the way to a certain extent, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely. Cast the right person and talk to them and be with them and get, you know, become friends and, you know, trust each other and stuff. But then just kind of stay out of it, and little nudges. But I totally agree. Like, that's something I see with my students. Like, they're like over directing, like over talking too much, you know, just a few simple little, you know, nudges. If you cast the right person, that's all you need.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really agree with what you said, Todd, about trust. Trust is so important. For Puya and Lynn, I think one of the things that I sort of set off right off the bat is like, look, I mean, the script can evolve, the script can change. Like, you tell me what's not working, you tell me what's not connecting, and then we could reshuffle it, rephrase it, or remove a line entirely if it doesn't resonate. And I think those sorts of things can go a long way in establishing that connection and saying, like, just because I authored this doesn't mean I'm the sole author. And you are all authors too. You're all the ones who are going to go and elevate the material, you know? And I think giving them that space and saying that you're safe, that knowing that like you hired a good crew around you that are going to be trustworthy, not exploitative or rude or mean, you know, I think all those things just go such a long way in terms of giving the actors the space that they require to really like fire on all cylinders.
What was your casting process for your film?
Well, it was a little different than it normally is. I had seen Puya in a short a few years back when my short was in film festivals, and there was just something about her essence. It was like, I think it's rare to find performers that are like pure emotional conduits. And you could kind of sense it when they're on screen, just like they're able to like just embody an emotion or an experience just so truly. And so she was always in the back of my head, and we had reached out to, you know, other like more name actors, so to speak, whatever that means. And they all, you know, a few of them politely declined, but also in the back of my head, I was always like, yeah, but it's Puya, right? And then like we'd have our meetings with our cast. I was like, yeah, but you know, it's going to be Puya, right? I mean, we all know this. And they're like, well, you know, we got to go through these steps. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Do what you need to do. Like, I know who I want to cast. And then Lynn came from a completely different perspective in that we actually auditioned her. And we auditioned a number of women. And I think that's something I wanted to say too, is like, it was stunning to me in ways I hadn't even expected. The level of talent in terms of actors that exist out here in Los Angeles that have been given no roles, that have never been given those opportunities. It's crazy. I mean, there was like literally like a list that I started writing. I was like, I gotta write roles for all these women. I don't even know how I'm gonna, I mean, I have to add like 20 more movies to my list by, I don't know, I guess that's what I gotta do, because it's like, they were just so amazing. But that's also one of those things that was really great too. Lynn, I was very green around the ears coming into the casting process because I hadn't really done it a lot before, and I was very nervous. And Lynn was our first person who came in both for the original auditions and for the callbacks. And it was funny because she actually had filmed at our rehearsal space, or our audition space, for her own film that she had directed the year before. So she came in, and one of the things that she had said before was that she sort of came in as like we're one-on-one, like, you know, I'm a filmmaker and you're a filmmaker too, and like, let's collaborate. And I think that initial like resonance really affected me, because I was like, cool, this person's not only a great actress, but she's also a collaborator and someone who has walked through fire before, like we all have, and said, okay, like, I know what this experience looks like. I'm going to put Mari at ease. And I had a sense that not only was she going to be able to deliver as the character, but also provide me that extra sense of security of like knowing that there is another person there who's actually acting in the movie, who's walked through this before and can identify things and be like, hey, Mari, like, just to be clear, we should add this line here in this section, or like, you know, all these things, all the tips that she brought to that material elevated it without question.
Well,
They're both so good.
Thank you. Yeah, they're so great.
Really good. What was, you know, I feel like, you know, obviously it's a rarity to have a trans director directing a trans actress. I'm curious, you know, what were there any revelations about that experience for either you or for your actress?
I think for both of us, it just felt really liberating to be able to talk so openly about these issues and not have that like barrier of like, oh, but I don't really understand your experience, I'm just trying to glean from it. That was one of those things too, where we offered the role to Puya, sort of sight unseen. You know, she just sort of got this offer and she was like, is this a joke? Like, what is this? Who are these goofballs that are making this movie? And but then she read the script and she fell in love with it. And when we sat down to talk about it for the first time, she just really was like, before you say anything, let me just say everything I have to say about this movie. I was like, okay. And then she just went through this list of like, here's the themes, here's the characters, here's the motivations, here's the past history that I gleaned from these 6 lines. And I was just like, I burst into tears because I was like, oh my God, to like have that pure transference of information without even having to talk about it was phenomenal. But I also think that's just from shared lived experiences of those like aspects. I mean, I'm sure the same for, you know, any like gay actors or queer actors in your guys' films too. It's like there's like that it's almost like a shorthand that could be developed, and I think that shorthand then can lead to those nuances that you don't see in films that are directed by like cisgender directors or straight directors, you know.
Well, I think we're kind of winding down here. I think this has been an incredible conversation. I guess I'd like to just close by asking if anybody what people have going on next. I mean, I know it's like we're about to enter this gauntlet of film festival, you know, however long it lasts, a year, whatever, you know, this whole process. But, you know, how are people thinking about the future? Not really just in the pandemic, but, you know, what else is up? What else is on the pike for all of us?
I would love to expand the world that the film lives in. So I would love to expand the Beauty President's universe and find more, you know, stories that align with what we did. And just really, I'm really into history and unearthing history and celebrating history. And so that's really where my focus is right now.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Same.
Hell yeah.
I'm starting.
I have like all these pages of ideas, and
Amazing. Yes.
I'm just gonna I don't know. Yeah, that's where I am right now.
Great.
I'm
Wes, what are you up to?
starting to write a new thing, and I'm kind of, I don't know, after doing a feature, it's hard because it's like, it just took so much work, raising money, and I mean, mostly raising money took work. I feel like the rest of it was fun to do. And so it's really scary to sort of start dreaming again of the next thing, but I think I'm ready to dive into at least like research writing phase of it.
I got a couple of scripts. I got a young adult like trans love story that I'm super excited about. That's an adaptation. I have another horror movie that's almost kind of the exact antithesis of like See You Then. It's like sharp and modern and like dark and messy and crazy. But I just hope that we all get the opportunity to make another one, and that we all get like a chance to just, and the other thing that I think that we all have to do is just help each other out, like that's something that I've really put onto myself after finishing this film is like, okay, like I had my shot. Now I got to make sure that these other filmmakers that I know who are super amazing get their opportunity too, because my God, like there's so many voices still out there.
Yeah, similarly with Trade Center, it's like when I was sort of close to finishing, everyone was like, should make a series of this. And so, I started recording all these stories. And one of the stories I recorded was a guy who I know who's Singaporean, who had a story about a cruising beach in Singapore, one of the only unreclaimed spaces of land in Singapore that was, used and purposed as a queer cruising space. And so I recorded the story, and then I was like, this would be a great story, but I'm probably not the person to direct this story. This is not like my story. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's a filmmaker in Singapore, who's a gay filmmaker, and sort of proposed this idea and was sort of like, I'll produce, you direct. And then, this series of shorts about these cruising spaces and sex spaces is just kind of building off from that. And I'm trying to reach out to other filmmakers and try and find things. And so like, I'll do some of them, but like, also let's see who else out there can bring this kind of approach of storytelling to their own communities or their own spaces and whatnot. So I agree, we're all aligned on that. We really do have to lift each other up and expand the opportunities for everyone.
And speaking of lifting all of each other up, I just wanted to let all the audience members know who are watching this right now. I cried at all 4 of these films. They are all so great. And even if you don't get a chance to see them at South by, you better see them somewhere else because they're totally worth it. They're all so good. Y'all, you're all so talented. It's crazy.
I'm watching your movie tonight, and I got the popcorn ready, and I can't wait.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they're really amazing films, and I'm really, really honored, and I think we all are to be in the company of each other.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah, really.
Absolutely.
Before we
I know we'll get to see each other in the real world someday.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really excited for that.
Me too.
Yeah,
Really
me too.
Let's just, before we go, let's plug our social media and any links that we want, or any, anything that we want, even if we have upcoming screenings beyond South by that we want to plug. My Trade Center Film, at Trade Center Film on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Adam Baran and abaran999. Anyone else, feel free to go.
Wes, you go.
No, you go.
I got, we have an Instagram for See You Then Film, and also my own, which is Mari W. Walker with 2 W's, just to make everybody's lives a little more complicated. I'm sorry, what was the third part of it? I'm sorry, my brain's starting to short circuit.
Anything, if you have other things you're plugging or anything you want to plug, basically.
No, just plugging all of you and plugging all the filmmakers at South by. Y'all, like, we got like a binge watching joy to be happening. Also, our film is also going to be playing at Disorient, which is going to be happening the day after South by ends, and also the Atlanta Film Festival.
I used to have a MySpace of some sort. That's it. I don't remember the name of it, and I don't have anything else.
But there is a Swan Song Instagram. I saw it. It followed me today.
There is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's Swan Song Film, I think.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you.
I have I'm Potato Hurley on Instagram, and the film is Potato Dreams Film on Instagram. And I also have, if anybody has Outfest Now app, I have sexy gay fairy tale shorts and my autobiographical short little potato play in there.
Hell yeah.
Amazing. I am at Whitney Skauge on Instagram and Facebook. And then to keep up with the Beauty President, follow at Breakwater Studios.
And of course, we know Breakwater Studios got nominated for an Oscar this morning for Best Short Documentary. So congratulations.
Oh my God! Wow.
Congrats! That's amazing.
The whole team's very excited.
Yeah, which is can be watched on the OpDocs. Can it still be watched on OpDocs, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So check that out.
It's
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say the film is called A Concerto's a Conversation. Thanks for that, Adam. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And Mari's film Swim is on YouTube, and my old films are on YouTube and Vimeo too. And so, just Google us and add us. Everyone, feel free to follow us all on social media. And
I do have one thing I could say.
Yeah, go for
there's
it.
a director's cut of another gay movie coming out, like at the end of April. It's the 15th anniversary, and I stupidly cut this scene out with Mink Stole, who was like one of my heroes back in the day. And so it's the glorious restored Mink Stole, travesty that's been put back in the film. So
the idea of a director's cut of another gay movie, when I know how dirty another gay, how outrageously filthy that movie is really, it's quite astonishing. So I'm glad you plugged that. I'm glad to know about that. I can't wait to watch that.
Yes.
Also, it's kind of depressing because I feel like it came out just yesterday to me in my mind. Like, it feels so new, and you're saying it's 15 years old. It's like, what?
Right? I know. Where does the time go, guys?
Yeah, where does the time go?
Well,
gotta make more movies.
Yep. The time has gone.
Yes.
We've been talking for about 90 minutes, and it's just flown by. And I want to just thank everybody so much for coming, all the people watching, all the people who are going to watch this later on YouTube, when we're going to put it up tomorrow. And thanks to all the filmmakers. And thanks again to South by Southwest for programming us all and bringing us all together. And I'm going to say we'll end it here. And let's give each other a round of applause.
Woo. Thank you, Adam. Thanks for the phone.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's been so great.